And Jesus calmly challenges the call to go versus the call to stay for family. That's tough. This third disciple approaches Jesus and says, I will follow. Verses 61 and 62. This disciple too has a but first moment. With the previous disciple, the one that Jesus invites to go, it is a case of external circumstances. Yet Jesus emphasizes that following him and proclaiming the kingdom of God is greater significance and importance. Yet here for this last disciple, the issue is internal. Jesus uses an illustration. And those who have farmed, or those who have ever mowed a lawn, on a riding mower especially, or driven a car. Most of us have done this. And going forward, trying to move forward while looking backwards, we tend to start doing this. We try to walk a line, and then we look backwards, and we realize now we're off course. And Jesus uses the illustration here to try to help not just this disciple, but those who are able to hear. No one having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. There is an intentional reference here by Luke, by Jesus, back to Sodom and Gomorrah. You see, Lot's wife did not go back. She did not return to Sodom and Gomorrah, but she looked back. How can we engage the work of God with distracted attention and a divided heart? And again, it's on the slide. This is not an actual return to the world or the previous way of life, but a reluctance to break with it. It's not a going back, but a looking back. This disciple's commitment or his profession, I will follow you, but first, was not thorough, was not yet complete. His internal struggle. We have a moment of confession here. We may struggle with the external hindrances in following Jesus. Because we do like social acceptance. We do like to fit into our culture. And for the most part, our culture, with its challenges, and it's not perfect, allows us to worship God freely. We've gathered here without persecution. We can sing songs and worship. But when we get to the internal ones, it becomes a bit more difficult. Because I don't know about you, but I like comfort. I like financial stability. I like having some of the understanding of the journey. I like some of the control. And full confession, I like sports. And there have been multiple times where God has dealt with me of, would you rather watch a Cardinals game or hang out with your kids? Would you rather spend time, typically 2.5 to 3 hours of a baseball game, watching versus learning or growing in me? Would you rather watch, and I know I'm going to get hated for this, Mizzou football, it's okay, or spend time with me? And yet, in each of these internal obstacles, we can ask the question, would you rather spend time doing or with me? Would you rather seek pleasure and comfort or spend time with me? Would you rather, and probably the one that's most difficult for all of us, is the safety security one. You see, Jesus' statement to these disciples all centers around where I am going is to death, are you really going to follow me then? So many people desire Jesus. But maybe it's only at an intellectual level, or an emotional level, or a self-fulfilling level, or at times when they're in the spiritual high. But they don't necessarily desire Jesus like Plato longed for that breath of air. When I asked myself the question that's on the slide, I mentioned to someone the other day, it is dangerous to preach messages like this. Because God's got that big bright neon sign going, you.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Do I desire to be transformed by and to follow Jesus as much as I desire air? Man, that's tough. Maybe the question, for what do I hunger and long for as much as air? If not Jesus, then what? I would invite us to have a moment of time of response. I'm simply going to play through one of the prayer choruses we had earlier. This can be one of those messages where God kind of hits us upside the head with a 2x4. But it can also be one of those things that 2 or 3 days down the road, or 2 or 3 weeks down the road, He brings back to mind. Maybe when we're just kind of at a loss for breath, and it brings back to our memory, desire me that much. But I would be remiss if I didn't give us the opportunity to respond. And I wonder, when was the last time we said something like, Jesus, I will follow you and I will be your disciple. But first,